All right, hello and welcome to part one of how to customize your texting and driving app. In this video, I'm going to show you one example of how you might customize this app to make it more user friendly. And I hope that after watching this video and some others, you will also start thinking of your own ideas about how you might modify this app. Okay, so actually, the very first thing that I'm going to do, and this is a practice that software engineers, computer scientists, people that write programs for a living commonly do. And the idea is once you have a functional version of your app, and then you want to make some changes or some upgrades, we're going to make a new version to do that, or make a copy so that we don't screw up the original functional or working version. So the way that we're going to do that in Google Sheets is on the very bottom left where it says simulation, that tab. I'm going to click the down arrow and then click duplicate. You'll notice it makes another tab that's called copy of simulation one. I'm going to click the down arrow again on the new one and click rename. And let's call this version 2. And so just clicking back and forth, we have version 2 is the one that we're going to make some changes to. That way, if we mess anything up, we still have our original working version of this app. Okay, so the user input or the change that I'd like to make for this app to make it a little bit more user friendly is to change the input. And so our app used meters per second originally, just because that's the easiest way for us um, to calculate the outcome that we want. But I think most of our users, which are high school students in the United States, probably don't have much sense for what a meter per second or 10 meters per second or 20 meters per second means as far as the speed of a car. So let's change it to miles per hour, a unit that's more understandable. Okay, so with that said, all the changes I'm going to make, I'm going to highlight in pink. You don't have to do this yourself, but this is just for me communicating to you the main changes I'm making. So the first change is where the velocity of car is listed. I'm going to change those units from meters per second and instead type in miles per hour, which is MI/HR, so miles per hour. Just doing that itself isn't going to change anything about the program. I'm going to need to make some other changes. But basically, what I'm communicating to the user, the person that's typing this information is that 10 that they're typing in now is not 10 meters per second, it's 10 miles per hour. But our app still needs this information in meters per second. So that's the next step. So I'm going to, right below where it says velocity of car, I'm going to type velocity of the car again. And I'll highlight that in pink. So that's a change I'm making. And in the yellow column where it says needed calculations, we're going to type in a formula so that our spreadsheet will calculate 10 miles per hour. What is that in meters per second? Okay, so what is 10 miles per hour in meters per second? How do we find that out? Let's go to Google. It's not the only way, but it's a good way. I'm going to type in miles per hour to meters per second. That's already in there. And 1 miles per hour is equal to 0.447 meters per second. We're talking about 0.447. So what that means is, for example, 10 miles per hour, you'd multiply that by 0.447 to get it in meters per second. So in this cell right here, I'm going to type the equal sign. I'm going to click on the input velocity of the car, which is 10, and then I'm going to multiply it by 0.447. And so what this is going to do is take the original velocity, or the velocity that we put in, 10 miles per hour, and then output it in meters per second. Now, I'll just notice a quick thing that I don't really like. This is rounding. This Google spreadsheet is rounding this to no decimal places. That really should say like 4.4 or 4.47. So let's change that. And the button up here that says increase decimal places, there we go. How about just one? So 4.447, it rounds to 4.5. Okay, next up. Now you'll notice the distance input or the distance output is now giving us the wrong value. To find the distance, we shouldn't multiply 10 miles per hour times 9 seconds. Instead, we want to multiply the speed in meters per second times 9 seconds. So when we go to this and click on 90, when it says equals C4 times C6, C4 would be the velocity of the car in miles per hour. That's C4. And instead, I want to change that so it is the velocity of the car in meters per second. So I'm going to delete the C4 and then click on the cell that I want, which is the 4.5. So it now says equals d5 times c6. Got it. So our updated speed is 4.5 times 9. So apparently roughly 40 meters. And I think this is rounding again. Let me just check. Okay, 40.2. So anyway, 40 meters. Great. I realized I should have coded this 4.5 or color coded it at least to make it orange or yellow to represent that that's a calculation going on in the middle. Okay, now let's keep going down through the spreadsheet and see if there's anything else that we need to change. And I noticed right here where it says velocity of the car equals 10 meters per second. This is also an internal calculation, but it's now referencing the wrong cell. It's grabbing from the cell that's 10 miles per hour, but we want it to grab from the cell that says 4.5 meters per second. And so I'm going to click on that cell, the 4.5. So it'll say equals D5. And so now for the velocity of the car, it's referencing that. And I'm going to increase the decimal place one more time. So it says 4.5 meters per second. Now I'm realizing I skipped a little step up above. The velocity of the car and the part that's in yellow, let's add our label to the right of it. So it should say 4.5 meters per second. So that's in the cell up above the velocity of the car. And then I'll color code this pink. Also, I'm just trying to show the like things that we're typing in new that are different. Okay, now our distance while reaction, or the reaction time, that looks like that's doing the right calculation. It's doing 4.5 times 0.4, so that's good. And then I think the last thing we're going to have to update here is the velocity of the car while braking. And that's still referencing that same cell, the 10 miles per hour. But we don't want it to reference that. So let's delete the C4. And instead, just scroll here, I want that to reference D5, the cell that says 4.5 meters per second. Okay. And then so just, it actually might be good practice to use a calculator to check this out. But just generally what's happening, this first one is using 4.5 times 9 to get that distance input. This next one is using 4.5 times 0.4 to get the second distance input. And then this distance while braking app is now using 4.5 as the velocity in its calculation. Okay, so that's just one change. And hopefully this gives you some ideas of maybe potentially other things that you might change. But we changed our input so that the velocity of the car is now we're asking for it in miles per hour. And then we made changes inside the program so that it is using meters per second in its actual calculations. Okay, thanks everyone for watching.